How's it going, guys? I recently made a video talking about translation types and which translation, the philosophies that translators use, whether or not it's dynamic equivalence or formal equivalence. But in that video, I mentioned that I really like the New Living Translation. And I wanted to go ahead and do at least a brief overview or a review of the New Living Translation. And particularly, there's one subject that I want to address about that. And that is the New Living Translation weak? I guess this is kind of a series I'm going to be doing where a lot of people can take translations and kind of put one, catchphrasey sort of names on them that stick. So the New American Standard 2020, I said, is it woke? Because I've heard that the most. I'm planning on probably turning this into a series maybe, but you hear also that the ESV is a Calvinist translation. Is that true? And then that brings us to what I'm talking about here today, which is the New Living Translation. Is it a weak translation? Now, number one, any translation that's been faithfully translated by a translation team, no matter how much you may disagree with their translation philosophy, if it's a faithful translation, that is, people have worked very hard on it, then I think that any kind of quote saying it's weak is, to be honest, I think it's despicable. Even if you don't agree or like the translation, if you know that the people that worked on it are godly individuals who have a heart for the Lord, and that they're trying their best to give you a good translation, then I think to say something like that without any information on it is pretty lowbrow. But anyway, the reason that I'm even talking about the New Living Translation is because, like I said, the New Living Translation played a very important role in my life. Now, I am aware that what I'm talking about is could be viewed as emotional, that it's not based in facts. But once I came to learn Greek, I found that I learned an awful lot about translations and how they work. I realized that there is no really such thing as a perfect translation, that we can try our best, but at the end of the day, there is no such thing, like I said, as a perfect translation. And some methods, I prefer some methods to others, but that just because you don't prefer the method used in a particular translation does not mean that that translation is inherently bad. So all that is a preamble. Today we're going to be talking about the New Living Translation. In particular, we have my copy here. This was called a Jesus-centered Bible. And my dad, it's funny, I was born and raised in a Christian home, and but I didn't really start taking my walk seriously until about, I would say, 6-7 years ago. And what happened is I had where I live in Washington State, there aren't really any stores like this anymore, but there used to be a Lifeway bookstore. And I went in there with my dad once, and we were looking at books, and he goes, "Oh, wow, this is a Bible. You should get this." And it was this one here. And I didn't want to buy it, but he goes, "You should get it, John, and get your mom one too, because she really likes it." And so I thought, okay, so I bought it. And it kind of, to be honest, really, that was the first Bible that I had purchased for myself with my own money. My parents, I'd had loads of Bibles. I grew up reading the New American Standard, and so I had lots of Bibles, but this was the first Bible that I actually purchased really with my own money. And anyway, I kind of carried it around for years, and I used it, primarily just as my carrying Bible. And I say carrying because I wasn't reading it. I would just take it if I went to church. I'd take it with me. Or if I was, going to some event where I knew it was a Christian event, then like a conference or something, then I would take it with me. But I wasn't really reading it. Well, fast forward then, till about, like I said, the time frame about 6-7 years ago, when I started to get serious about my Christian walk. And, it was, to be honest, I don't really know what the catalyst was. It had to be the Holy Spirit. But what happened was, I know I'm doing a review of the New Living Translation, but it's kind of turning into a video about my testimony. But Anyway, what happened is I one day, I think, as far as I can remember, on a whim, I picked it up. I started being more faithful in attending church, and I was listening to the pastor. And then, like I said, on a whim, one day, really, I picked it up, and I just flipped to the book of Romans, and I read it straight through the whole book in one sitting. And let's just say the Bible came more alive to me that day than it ever had before in my life. Because the way the New Living Translation sounds is as if it felt so real, is as if Paul was writing to me. Because the English was so understandable. It was in such a simple yet not clicky, like in a lingo of today, but it was so understandable. And it cut me to the quick, to use a King James term. It cut me to the quick. And what happened is I read the whole book of Romans, and then I went and ended up reading the whole Bible in the New Living Translation. And it changed my life. Because, up until that time, I've been using the New American Standard, which is what I primarily use now, which I really love the New American Standard. But one of the downsides of using a formal equivalence translation is that sometimes it can be hard to get the flavor of what the writer is saying. You get the words and I can read it, but it was hard understanding maybe getting a second insight. Whereas if you're using, like the New Living Translation did for me, a more thought-for-thought translation, it really helps to bring out what the writer is saying in common vernacular, in common English. And so it was so impactful on my life, actually, that I went and I got she was my girlfriend at the time, now she's my wife. I was like, you have to get this. I was super gung-ho on the New Living Translation. I was like, you've got to read it. I'm telling you, it'll change your life. And my brother-in-law, same thing. And another friend of mine, I got him to buy one too. And all three of them, same thing. They all said that they all grew up, and we all grew up in the same church, reading the New American Standard. And they're like, wow, dude, I've never read that passage the same. And, looking back on it now, I use the New Living Translation. I find that I do use it less and less sometimes these days, because I think the New Living Translation is at its best as a stepping stone, as a building block, like a foundation to get you into the Word, or as a commentary, which I use it quite often sometimes. I go, well, how did they word that? And the New Living Translation, in my mind, is not weak. It has a specific goal, and it accomplishes that goal beautifully. If I'm going to, cut a board, I'm not going to be using my drill gun and complaining about how much it sucks as a tool, right? You cut a board, you need a saw. And I would put this in the category of the right tool for the right job. And the New Living Translation will always have a special place in my heart because it was so impactful for me. And, later on, I ended up writing in the preface here, and I'm going to go ahead and read it to you. And I actually took it from the preface to the King James, and it really stood out to me. It was really impactful. So I'm going to go ahead and read it to you, and I want you to think about this, okay? And this is the translators of the King James here, and they're saying this. How shall a man meditate in that which he cannot understand? How shall they understand that which is kept closed in an unknown tongue? Translation is that which openeth the window to let in the light, that breaketh the shell that we may eat the kernel, that putteth aside the curtain that we may look into the most holy place, that removeth the cover of the well that we may come to the water. Without translation, we would be like a man whom, when given a sealed book and delivered with this motion, read this, I pray thee, he was fain to answer, I cannot, for it is sealed. Rather than leaving man in this tragic state, we would cause faith to grow in men's hearts the sooner, and to make them be able to say with the words of the psalm, as we have heard, so we have seen. King James Translator 1611. Think about that. Translation is that which opens the window to let in the light, that breaks the shell that we may eat the kernel. translations serve a purpose, and that's to get us into the Word of God. And just because you may not like one translation or prefer another does not automatically make the other translation weak. And I think that to say that the New Living Translation is a weak translation is made out of ignorance. And it really, there are some people around the world that I know. For example, I hear that the New Living Translation is used quite often in prison ministry, because a lot of the individuals in prison never had a good education or can't read very well. And the New Living Translation is a translation for them that they can read and understand. So simply because we prefer a more formal translation does not automatically mean that another translation is less accurate simply because we don't like it. And now, with that aside, the New Living Translation is a very accurate translation, to be honest. It has a stellar translation team of very conservative scholars, and it's not a liberal translation at all. So that aside, it is a very accurate translation, and it's not a paraphrase. A paraphrase is not the same thing. This would be the furthest on the side of dynamic equivalence that you could go before you go into paraphrase. However, the New Living Translation is not that. It originally came from what was called the Living Bible, and it was made by one man, and what he did is he took his he was reading his Bible to his son, and his son goes, "Dad, why can't I understand it? Why can't, I don't get it." And so what he did is I believe it was a King James, it might have been American Standard Version, but anyway, he took that edition and he paraphrased it and said, well, if I was going to word that, this passage in modern English, how would I say it? And he worded it that way. Well, eventually that became the Living Bible. Well, down the line in about the 90s, I think 1995, maybe 96, the translators, they got together, a group of translators, and they wanted to take that paraphrase, the Living Bible, and actually create a translation so that it would be an accurate translation, not a paraphrase. So, working together, that's what they came up with. They came up with the New Living Translation. And again, I owe a great debt to the New Living Translation, and I will always be thankful for it. And, anyway, so no, the New Living Translation is not a weak translation, and I highly recommend you check it out. And if you're using it, do not feel discouraged because someone might have said something negative about it, okay? I recommend everyone use multiple translations. I'm not a sole translation advocate. I think that multiple translations are a good thing. And if you don't, I think you're doing yourself a great disservice. But anyway, with that aside, I love the New Living Translation, and I think you should definitely check it out. So anyway, God bless you guys, and leave a comment if you like the New Living Translation or whatever translations you like. Or if there's a video idea you want, go ahead and leave a comment below. I'd love to make it for you. So anyway, God bless you guys, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.